Cool. Yeah, we're live. Brilliant. So welcome to the webinar, Talent Hive webinar, where today we're going to discuss quite an interesting topic around cover letters, if they kind of warrant existence or not, and then dealing with the highs and lows of applying for jobs, essentially, turning the negatives into a positive. So we won't start, mate. We'll give it another 5 minutes for all participants to join, and then we'll kick things off about 5 minutes past. So is everyone enjoying the weather today? It's absolutely lovely here in Birmingham. What about you guys?
Yeah, take it that's sarcasm.
Yeah. It's miserable. Is it August? It is August, isn't it?
I kind of feel like it's sort of like spring all over again. It's a little bit weird. It kind of seems to go really, really sunny and then it rains loads. So who knows? What month is it? We are August, are we?
It is August, yeah. Maybe I'll jet away somewhere and escape this weather, or not.
Or not.
At least it's not when we were fully locked down. So
you were living your best life in lockdown, weren't you, Aid? I've seen pictures of you with your, was it it's a bit more than a paddling pool you had set up, wasn't it?
Something like that. I had my best ever tan, to be fair. Strong tan game.
I do think it helped, didn't it, to have that nicer weather earlier. I think it would have been even harder.
Yeah. At least you can get to the pub now, can't you, if you're in the bad weather?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, pubs, it's socially distanced. I suppose outside's okay-ish. And then we'll get there.
Depends what pub you go to, I think, from my experience.
Sorry?
Depends what pub you go to, I think, from my experience. Social distance, some are good, some are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that way, isn't it?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
I think the bigger brands are doing it well. Definitely. Like M&B. I've been to a couple of them.
Should go down my local. Nothing at all.
Really?
Nothing at all, no. There's only about 6 people in there at once, so I think they know everyone. It's a little village pub, so we'll be all right.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. I'll have
Been
a word
eating
with
out,
the landlord. Sorry?
So the vibe, have you been eating out on the eat out scheme?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, locally in the village, we went into Stratford. The experience wasn't fantastic, but it was really nice to see staff working, restaurant fairly busy. But you have to just view it as what it is, and it's really good to see people working and enjoying something. And we just went opposite what we used to be the Thai boathouse, so there was rugby team there that were drinking, and it was just glimpses of normality. And I guess the normality, the dining experience wasn't great, but it was really nice to be out and seeing and being with family.
Is that the one by Bistro Pierre?
Yeah, it was exactly there. I didn't want to name
Yeah. There's a nice little terrace out there. It's a GM called Kyle we put in there, actually. And he looked after us. But they've got that little cocktail shack, haven't they, just over the road?
Yeah.
Cool, by the river. If anyone's near Stratford-on-Avon, we're a tourist rep.
Planning to go soon, actually. It's one of those places that I keep saying I need to go. Like, I've driven through it so many times, or I've been on work for something and then come away, and I keep saying we're going to go. So it's definitely on the list of things to do before summer's up. So
I live in Stratford-on-Avon, but I work in Birmingham, and Stratford's busier than Birmingham city centre at the moment. It's crazy times we're in. Crazy times.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think most people have joined us now, so I'll kick things off. A bit of admin to start with. For those who haven't joined us on Talent Hive webinar today, it's a chat really. We're not going to dictate to you about how to do things and, this is the only way to do it, but it's really good to get insightful information from key people in our network about their views on certain topics. And this is week 3 of an 8-week series we're doing, where we're pretty much week for week going through the job application phase of what a lot of people will be going through at the moment. So hopefully this will kind of relate to a lot of people who haven't maybe been on the job market for a while. And as I've kind of highlighted on everyone we've done, I think if you're applying for jobs 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the way you can do it these days is a lot different. So hopefully we can highlight some more kind of modern trends in terms of job searching. So today we're going to cover 2 topics. We're going to look at cover letters. Some people believe in them, some people don't. and probably look at what a good cover letter should look like if you're intending to do one. Then also something which probably relates to a lot of people in terms of dealing with the highs and lows of your job search, and really kind of probably turn in any negative during that search into a positive and being constructive around it. So as always, our webinars, we try and keep them down to an hour, albeit I am known to chat a little bit. We will record this as well, so if you need to rush off and take a call, etc., you can always revert back to our recording, which usually gets posted online a few hours after we finish. Or indeed, if you find it insightful, you want to refer it to someone in your network, friend, family, by all means forward it on, and I think it goes on to part of our website. Just so we don't interrupt the flow of the webinar, we've got a Q&A box which is launched now. So if you've got any questions during the webinar you'd like asking, about the last 10 minutes of the webinar, we'll kind of run through those and we'll pick out key questions which haven't already been answered. But if we can't get around to answering every question that's asked, we will follow it up and come back to you directly and assist where we can, really. Let me just share my screen there. Lovely. Is that all on there, Aid?
It is, yeah.
Really good. Thank you, my technical co-host. So yeah, I'm really pleased to welcome our three guests today. So we've got Hayley, who's from Imago Venues. We've also got Gemma, who joins us from De Vere Hotels, and my sidekick Aid from Talent Hive. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Really, I'm not going to tell you what you do and where you come from, so I'll leave you guys to introduce yourselves. Do you want to kick us off, Gemma?
Yeah, so Gemma, I'm currently Director of HR at Beaumont Estate, which is part of the De Vere Group. I'm based in the Midlands, but commute down to Windsor, and hospitality is all I've ever done. So something like cover letters and what we come on to are really quite important to me, but we'll go through the different stages. But yeah, hospitality is my bag.
Thanks, Gemma. Hayley?
Yeah, so I'm Hayley. I work for Imago Venues, and I'm Senior Business Development Manager. I don't know how many people will know Imago Venues, but we're the wholly owned business of the Loughborough University. So we have 3 on-site hotels and a day conference centre. All sorts of different things obviously happening within those venues, and obviously we were just talking before the seminar, we get a lot of sports-based business at the university, so a lot of that. In terms of my role, so I look after our business development team, so recently recruited early part of the year, so some more kind of recent experience of recruitment as well. And yeah, kind of been in hospitality pretty much since I left school. Took a slight change, thought I was going to be ops based, and ended up more the sales route, but I think all of it's really important, and obviously lots of experiences in that time. And that's it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hayley. What about you, Aid? What do you do? I can't remember.
So yeah, I've worked for Talent Hive now for 5 years. Left the industry after 15 years working in hotels just for change. So I've seen it from the agency side, and I've recruited as an operator as well. So I spent 10 years with Q Hotels, and prior to that I was at the Belfry when it was De Vere, and the Ryder Cup was there back in its heyday. So yeah, that's me really.
Brilliant. Thanks, Aid. Thanks, guys. Again, thanks for joining us. So first topic today is cover letters, which I think, if I could kind of talk from my personal experience, have maybe grown on me a little bit over the years. When I was a bit of 15 years ago when I started recruitment, I didn't really firmly believe, and maybe because I saw quite a lot of generic kind of cover letters, which you just knew were on every application they made. But I think a well thought out cover letter, which is designed towards a job, the job you're applying for, and actually giving reasons why you're applying, and maybe give a bit more subject around why you think you're suitable for the job, etc. Spoke to that application, I think holds a lot of weight. So I think probably now we're coming into a time where there are numerous applications for every vacancy. It could be a really valuable tool to kind of stand out from the crowd. But that's my thoughts on cover letters. What about you guys? what's your thoughts around cover letters? Do you believe in them, or do you not read them? What's your thoughts?
I'm a believer, and I guess it can be role dependent. If you know your CV is stacked up against everything that somebody is looking for, then typically that should be able to stand alone. But if you are a hotel receptionist looking to go into a sales role, a reactive sales role, it would be really beneficial to kind of bolster some of your learning into that cover letter. And we talked on a couple of the webinars before, it was about giving your personality, because you're not going to get that through all of the ATS systems, so the applicant tracking systems that most hotels and workplaces have now. So you've got to go through such a process, and just showing that human side to you, I think is advantageous, but not for everything. If your CV stacks up for the job that you're applying for, or you think there's some question, if there's any question, then get the cover letter done.
Thanks, Gemma. Hayley?
I'd probably agree. I think they almost help to give a bit of narrative around who you are and maybe your experience. I've also had it where maybe it's kind of helped to explain maybe gaps in CVs. So there might be all sorts of things, personal reasons, various bits and bobs, or career breaks, or whatever that needs to be. And obviously that doesn't have to be detailed. You haven't got to tell people your sort of personal matters, but sometimes it can help people to understand. I think it's a great idea. Like you say, it helps to build a personality, because especially if you're looking through a lot of CVs, you're kind of going through the right, have they got that experience, have they got that, but you're trying to understand what that person's actually kind of like. I'm personally a big believer in them.
Good. Hey, do you read cover letters?
Yeah. I think the key thing is that I think Gemma touched on it. It's got to show your personality. You read so many that talk about I'm a hardworking individual, I'm passionate, and you just switch off straight away. And you can read 100 of them. So I think for the right job and selling yourself, yes, not just a generic bang bang bang.
The usual kind of script, isn't it? I'm motivated. I'm a team player. Yeah, unfortunately, everyone puts those. So I think it was really bespoke. And actually, sometimes, if there's any job application, read a job advert or a job spec or a job description and find out what they're looking for and mirror it back. Don't lie and don't just regurgitate the job description, but actually look at the skill set, the transfer skills, soft and hard skills they're looking for. And if that's you, really highlight it, because the person who's going through those 10, 50, 100 CVs, you need stuff that's going to resonate with them and catch their eye, because they're looking at a lot of candidates. So I think last week, I think we talked about scoping out the right opportunity and researching the right companies, etc. And I think a cover letter, especially in the current climate where there's a lot of applications, it's probably another tool to kind of help yourself stand out from the crowd. And I'll throw this one out there. What about video testimonials, which I think back in the kind of techie industry and the marketing industry and IT, etc., were quite commonplace, 5-10 years ago. But even hospitality, to catch up with the times, here we are on a webinar, video calls, we're now in a tech-savvy world. How would you respond if you received an application with a video testimonial cover letter?
Well, every webinar that you've done in this series has mentioned a video call such as this. So I gather you're quite passionate about them now. Sometimes in hospitality, as long as we've got the technology to be able to view it, I do think it is actually, it is all about your personality now, isn't it? And the adverts that you see are now so detailed. What's demanded of the applicant is so much greater than what it's ever been. They can demand the qualifications, level of experience, whereas before it might just be food and beverage experience, as an example. Everything's desirable, but now it's expected and, part of how you get through to the next process. So again, just, picking up on what you said about the cover letter, if they've said change management is important, put in the process that you had in change, how you got on with it, what you did, what your role was, and just paint that little bit of a picture. But videos, Yeah, I just think it would be quite fun to see, and somebody's really invested quite a bit of effort into it. And, you know, for those of us on furlough, it isn't just about getting up and having a shower because we're on a webinar today, is, you know, doing something, you know, really meaningful and being quite genuine to the company that you're pitching at, that you are investing that time in them, and this is how you see yourself culturally fitting in. But am I there yet? Definitely not.
I don't think they have to be ultra professional either. I think it's acceptable to, and I see people do marketing and things where, you know, a basic iPhone or whatever, you know, smartphone you're using, it doesn't have to be polished and you have to spend hundreds of pounds on one. I think it's the opportunity again to even more put your personality across. And I think our friends, I can't remember who mentioned it to me. I've definitely got a friend in another sector of recruitment. One of his clients actually will shortlist candidates for a role and get them to do an introduction video as the first stage of interviews, which I think is quite and this was pre-COVID, by the way. It's not just because everyone can't meet each other, or it's a bit of a funny thing at the moment, but I think it's a good way of getting more across, I suppose. What's your thoughts, Hayley?
Yeah, I've obviously not necessarily experienced it, but yeah, I think why not? It definitely would make you stand out. It's something different. And actually, that's quite interesting. You're saying that companies are using that to almost do their first phase. That's something that probably I'll consider for the future, maybe. But as and when.
No, I like it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously technology's always been there, but definitely kind of been thrust into everybody's worlds over this last however many months. I think I would definitely be willing to look at them and see them if people were to send them in. Yeah, I think it'd be nice that, like you say, that you kind of get a bit more of a feel then for that person and their personality.
Yeah, I think it's just an addition, isn't it? Well, I'll throw a different question at you, Aid. What would a decent cover letter, sorry, going back to a normal cover letter, I was just thinking that those on the webinar today might be wondering what a good cover letter might look like. So the size, structure, what would it look like? What would make you read a cover letter?
Was that to me?
Yeah, to you. Oh. But this isn't preempt.
I didn't hear the name he said. I think the opening two lines have got to stand out, because, like I say, as soon as you see hardworking, passionate, you don't even look at it, and you know. So I think it's got to be relevant to the job that you're looking for. It's like, I think you mentioned, you see a lot of generic cover letters, so it needs to be specific to that client. So you need to have done your research on that client, which means you need a cover letter for every job that you're applying for, which will be different. Yeah, it's a chance to cover facts that you may not have got into your CV that you wouldn't necessarily ordinarily have on your CV. Yeah, they're the main things, really. It does have to just be different to the standard words. That will just turn people straight off. I also think, and it's maybe cover letters, maybe not, but following up an application with a LinkedIn message to the hiring manager, I think, can also be as powerful as, it's almost like a mini cover letter. Just sort of, you know, mentioning, because that hiring manager might not even get to see your CV if there's a lot of red tape around where the applications go. So just a quick, you know, because they'll see a quick overview of your CV, and if you can get your personality across in a short paragraph to the hiring manager, it's another way to look at a cover letter directly into the hands of that hiring manager.
I think with technology at the moment and social media and LinkedIn and things like that, I think it's a lot easier to get to hiring managers than it used to be. I'm all for initiative and doing something beyond what you expected. I don't think in the current job market, and even pre-COVID, that just sending a CV to a job is enough these days. I think you've really got to show them you want the job and stand out from the crowd, rather than just sitting there applying for a job and waiting for something to happen. I think we covered it in the last one in terms of networking. Do you know anyone in that organisation you're applying for? Can they refer you? Can you speak to the hiring manager? Can you get a conversation? Even for me, a follow-up call. I'm not offended when someone applies for a job, be it for us or for a role of recruiting, and don't call us within 2 minutes of sending your CV, but give us 24 hours maybe. And a follow-up call shows me that they might have gone from the maybe pile to the they actually want this job pile. So I think there's little things you can do would really kind of help your application. Don't stalk people. People are extremely busy at the moment with the amount of applications are getting, and that's my clients who are kind of directly recruiting themselves at the moment. But I think follow-up calls for me it shows initiative. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, guys.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing for me is kind of, and you might have covered it maybe on some of the other webinars, is almost that having more of a kind of opportunity to have a dialogue around it. So just because you've kind of seen that role and want to apply for it doesn't mean you might still have questions, and it's okay to want to talk about the role. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that sometimes it can feel like it's very employer heavy, as in, is this person right for that job? Well, actually, the job also needs to be right for the person, because otherwise you're kind of wasting both of your time. Do you know what I mean? Because different organisations have got different cultures and different ways of doing things. So I definitely think, I know that becomes more tricky, particularly when applications and it's getting busy, but I personally, like you say, I don't think there's any harm in contacting somebody to say, look, I've seen the role, can we have a chat about it? Because again, you put a job description out, you might put a person spec, and how you think you've written it, they might still have questions, or you might not have, it might not all be 100% clear. So
thinking on the hop on that, yeah, kind of maybe even put a call in before you apply, because on most job specs you'll have your desirable skills and your essential skills. Yeah. Let's be honest, everyone we hire or everyone we recruit into a job, they don't always tick every box. There's always one development area. No one is exactly that job spec. So even maybe putting a call in before you apply and making them aware of yourself, or maybe even a better way than following up on an application and saying, I tick this box and this box, but this is an area I need development. Would you still work on my application?
100%.
Yeah, like that.
Last week in the webinar, I talked about having a strategy and making the next move being the right move. And if somebody put on their advert for more information, call, that typically leads to you getting the full job description and an honest overview of what culturally the business is and what's right and what's wrong. And if you have made that call, you are at the forefront of their mind. So then if you follow that through with your application, they've noted you down already, and you've shown some really good intent. And on the cover letter and where you shut off and how to start it, it is about doing a different letter for every job that you apply for, and how you start it. It's just so emotive to me, to Adrian, to Hayley, whoever's reading it. But I guess the most impact that you can have is looking at the company values that you're applying for and having something quite powerful to open it. So if they're a positive well-being and a positive attitude, start it with something impactful about being positive, and then lead on from that, and just show them that you have researched the business, you have looked at their values, and actually you're really aligned to this, and you've demonstrated that in X, and explain what your personal morals are and your values, and what ethically is good for you at work. And I think that really paints a great picture of who you are, the type of work that you do, and how you're going to conduct yourself in that workplace. And feedback is something that is going to be demanded quite a lot, and if you've given them all that information, they will give you really relevant feedback to say, you did X, Y, and Z, actually what we're looking for, and we see development. And then you've had some information that you can go on and work to for the next application.
Which brings us really nicely on to our next. Thanks for that, Gemma. Some really good points there. Brings us nicely on to kind of highs and lows of the job application process, really. I think there's, in the current climate, there's going to be lots of people who are going to have kind of lots of ups and downs and lots of rejection that they might not necessarily have usually had, and that's because of the volume of applications for each job. It's definitely an employer's market at the moment. So in terms of dealing with kind of highs and lows, so Gemma just touched on the subject there of maybe not even getting past the CV stage. You as hiring managers, what would you be happy to give feedback on CVs that didn't get progressed to interview? I mean, would you welcome calls like that? How would you deal with it?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if Gemma's had a similar experience, and having recently recruited, or I say recently, it was sort of January time, and for a business development role, which in my opinion is a fairly reasonable level of a role, and attracts a certain type of candidate. I was quite shocked by the amount of people that hadn't done those extra things and didn't ask for feedback and didn't come back. So yeah, I think, you know, first and foremost, it's obviously a very, very tough time for everybody. But that really is the thing that's going to help you grow. And, you know, of course you'll be disappointed at the time, but it is very cliche, but it's how you move on from that and what can I take from that? And if you're not asking for that feedback, then how do you know what to grow on? It could be something really simple, or it might be something that, I don't know, you just need to rethink about maybe how you worded your application, maybe think about doing a video, who knows what it might be.
Yep.
But I think it shows so much more about that applicant, and actually that you're interested and you actually genuinely did care about the role.
Could it sway you to put them onto the shortlist if they'd been rejected before, perhaps? Maybe?
Yeah, I don't see why not, especially if it's something that you've given, like I say, maybe as constructive feedback. You know, you need to go away and maybe think about this, or you maybe didn't show this in your CV. At the minute, maybe you're not right for it, but you might have another role that comes along and the situation's different, things might have changed, the team dynamic might have changed, and actually that person becomes much more suitable to that role then. So yeah, you'll remember them then. You'll think, well, that was the person that spoke to me about that. Actually, this could be the right role for them now.
Yeah, we've had that in normal times, and probably moving forward, we'll have candidates who get entered into processes. It could be CV stage or even to final stage, and they're not right. But you know, 6-12 months down the road, they'll be considered for something else, and that's because they're on their radar, they're on employers' radar, and they've worked out they're the right fit, but they weren't quite right for that role. So I think it's turning that negative of being rejected, and unfortunately we're in the day and age, and we all do it, you just get an automated response because the internal system they're using is they'll create a short list of candidates and you just click a load of buttons for the reject candidates, and unfortunately they get a generic letter. But unfortunately it's better to get a generic letter than just not hear anything at all, but that's the kind of day and age we're in at the moment. So yeah, kind of maybe taking advantage of that when you do get those. What about you, Gemma?
A lot of adverts at the minute are saying that they won't be able to provide feedback for those that didn't get to interview stage. So, and you know, we can appreciate how many applicants are coming through. So, you know, that is, of course, it's going to be a knock to your confidence. It is going to be a blow that you have to take because you didn't get past, you know, and let's face it, sometimes it is a robot, and, you know, you can see how quickly you can screen, you can search for keywords, and if you haven't matched that, you might automatically be rejected. But, you know, just to echo what Hayley was saying, that call for feedback, you know, if it's done out of genuine want to grow and develop and understand what your shortfalls were, it is such a great in to have. And, you know, we talked about networks last week. It is about having that contact, having that little in that you've got to show your personality, to demonstrate what you can do. And most of the time, and certainly in our industry, that's so much better in person than what we can do on paper, because we're all doers. We love being in the action. We love being with customers, and, you know, we like to have a bit of flair. So, you know, we've got to put our money where our mouth is, and do that when we're looking for our next move. So yeah, I think in knowing that candidates ask for feedback, it makes us better at our jobs, it makes us better recruiters, it makes us interview better, it makes us analyse the data better, because we have to have a genuine reason as to why that candidate didn't get the job and somebody else was selected. So, you know, that works on both sides, and actually probably more for the recruiter, that they've got to be absolutely spot on with their decisions. And you know, sometimes it is a cultural fit, but they've got to be able to articulate that. So to get that feedback, I think, is valuable, and it should have been well thought out from the recruiter.
Sure. What's your experience, Nate? So if we were to put it on maybe our side, where we'll represent a client to recruit roles, yeah, have you had any kind of success or non-success stories around liaising with the clients and maybe pushing the candidates' kind of case forward and getting feedback at all?
I think obviously in our job, we all screen a candidate before we send them on, and just sort of touch on it. We do get candidates that will send a CV that it just doesn't read right. Like they work for a company that's, you know, has got an acronym as the name, but we don't know what that is. And sometimes you'll see he's going direct to a client and they won't even have a clue what it is that you work for. And I had a candidate recently that he worked in London in a restaurant and I had no idea what it was. I struggled to find it. And then when I actually spoke to him, and he talked to me very well. He worked at a fantastic restaurant in London. So we're the barrier between the clients, so we can kind of give that information to the client in terms of that. But so if you're going direct to a client, then absolutely follow it up, because they may not understand your CV. And we can help everyone on the call. I mean, I've helped a few people. If you want us to have a look at your CV and where, you know, because we don't know everything, we don't know everywhere, you know, we don't know every hotel, every restaurant in the UK. So you might not stand out for that reason. So a call to a hiring manager can help you to kind of get that information across. And I've got people into process before that I've literally thrown their CV away. And when they've called up to
thrown away.
In a secure way. But they've been discounted. And when they call up and explain what they do, actually, I haven't got a name to mind. But also I've got a friend that he's been looking for work for a little while, doing hospitality. And he kept getting regretted at interview stage. Very, very good CV, big brands. And he kept asking me, like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because I'm not your interview. So I asked him to go and get feedback, and it turned out he was being overly negative about his previous employer. He's worked for maybe 2 companies in his career, so not much interview experience. So actually gaining that feedback from the interview meant that he could change his tact. And it wasn't that he was openly being negative about his employer and previous employers. He was being quizzed on it. They were asking him, what do you dislike about your employer? And he didn't realise he was doing anything wrong, really. He was answering the question being asked. But actually by getting that feedback has then allowed him to change his interview style and has now had success in securing the role. So just examples from my side.
Cool. It's a bit of a weird question, really. I was going to say, what's the best way of dealing with rejection? We've all been kind of searching for jobs. I'll never forget the one job I didn't get in London when I was a junior chef, and I did that kind of thing where I went, well, I didn't want to work there anyway. I think it was a Savoy, rubbish place, rubbish, and I got a rejection letter. How do we all deal with it? You know, on a personal note, when we're looking for jobs. I mean, we've probably all applied for a few jobs over the years now. We're not kind of new into the arena. How have you dealt with it personally before as a job seeker?
Honestly, you have that, just like you were saying about the Savoy, and shame on them, you just think, oh, well, I maybe didn't want it anyway. And, you try and defend your character and defend your experience. But with maturity, you just have to think, and especially like now, if we're applying now and we've done a really good cover letter and we've done our CV, if we didn't get through, genuinely we are not right, and there was somebody that we were against that had something that we didn't. So it's just a reassessment. What can we do differently? What other experience could we do to help us? And for those that have been watching the webinars for the last 2 weeks, there's been GMs that have furloughed, there's GMs that have been working in Ocado, all of these different stories. This is every job title within the industry has been affected in some way, and has found themselves looking for a job when they thought they were safe and secure, and they will be rejected by different industries, different venues. And it's not personal, is it? You're just pitched against potentially 200 other people, and that desirable list on the job advert isn't desirable anymore, it's expected. So it's so easy to say take the positives. It wasn't somebody personally that rejected you, unless you got to interview stage and you would have gained that feedback. But those automatic responses that come a week or two within the applying, typically that is a robot that's rejected you. So take that and re-look at the job advert, try and answer that yourself if you're not getting any feedback, or just move on to your next venture and take the time to create your strategy that we talked about last week and getting the right move. And I think I can't remember who it was last week. They said, but you know, some people just need a job. We've got bills to pay, so we're applying for lots of things. We haven't got time to make a strategy of our ideal job. So you know, there's lots of cases of that as well. So just be realistic with yourself, and you know, was that the right move for you? Was it the right career move?
Yeah, I think less is more. And I do have, you know, we've had quite a lot of calls from people who are trying to change sector at the moment, trying to change department within hospitality, trying to get promoted. I think they've got to be a bit kind of realistic in terms of the market at the moment. You know, people are advertising for a certain role. They're going to have relative people for every role they advertise for the moment. Whereas pre-COVID, for January, February time, they would look at people with transferable skills or want to step out of a different department to the hotels to another one, but they had the right attitudes, etc. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's the employer's market, and they are going to have the cherry pick the best candidates really. So I think be realistic on what you're applying for. Yeah. Have you got anything to add to that, guys?
No, I think like you say, you've covered everything, and I know it always, I said before, it seems so cliche, and it will be tough at the time. And I'm you know, personally, I'm really sorry that all of you are having to obviously go through this process at the moment. It's tough. It's really tough. But you know, just keep going, and that right role will come along. Personally, I don't have masses of experience of sort of myself attending many sort of external interviews. I've been with Margot for quite some time. I have been through quite a few of internal ones, which were just as hard, if not harder in some ways, to sort of maybe face colleagues sort of the following week knowing you didn't get a role. And at the time, yeah, of course you think, oh, well, why? And then you're looking at maybe the person that got that role. But like Gemma said, with sort of time and maturity, you just have to think, do you know what? It probably wasn't right. And actually, I have to trust that they made that decision in the best interest of the company, but also the best interest of me. That, you know, I could have forced myself into a position by saying I was this and that, and then might have really struggled with the role. And actually, you know, that's what I say. I think it is a kind of employer's market, but it is still sort of a two-way street. And you know, just don't sort of forget that it might not have also been right for you, and that right role will come along. It will. You just might have to persevere a little bit longer than normal to get there. But yeah, definitely don't give up, and definitely use it constructively to grow and move on from it.
Yeah, absolutely. You ever been rejected from a job, Aid?
Never.
You were Q Hotels for about 20 years, weren't you? So.
Yeah, but no, I think it's just, and I know it's hard probably to say it, but it's just trying to stay positive. You know, something will come up, and appreciate, you know, probably there's a financial aspect to you know, sort of needing to find work, but you know, for every rejection, it's just on to the next. I'm a very glass half full kind of guy, and that's, I think, is just how you've got to try and be during this, and do what you've got to do to, you know, to put money on the table for now, and just keep on applying, because as the guys say, the roles, you know, they will come back, and we'll touch on the sort of job market soon. You know, they will come back, and you know, you've got to be ready. And I think you can start to get into a negative mindset, and that can affect you as well, because the phone might ring and you pick it up, and if you're not in the right mindset, we do all the time, you know, you call a candidate to apply for a job and it's terrible, and you turn it off straight away. And so it's just keeping that positive mindset throughout this, and yeah, just keep going.
And people are getting jobs in hospitality at the moment. And we'll come to the job market bit in a bit, but people are being offered jobs by ourselves or directly. You know, people are getting appointed, so it's not all negative out there.
Just going back to what Adrian was saying, if it's okay, and actually that sort of part about actually people need to pay the bills, and as a recruiter, I would much sooner somebody probably show, even within their cover letter, maybe not in that initial first sentence or two, that this is what you've been doing in the meantime, to show that, you know, actually as a character, that means a lot to employers, that you're not kind of sitting on your laurels and just sat at home. Actually, you know, yeah, I have got to put food on the table and I need money in the bank, and this is what I'm doing to keep myself. But actually, this is probably what I've learned from it, because it might be something that is completely unrelated to the role that you're doing, but actually there might still be a relevance. You know, there's still things you will have learned. And, you know, how many times do we sort of, maybe as an industry, you'll look at another industry and think, well, they're doing that, why don't we do that? And actually, it's not until you open your eyes that you might actually have some ideas within that would be new to hospitality, for example. So I think don't be sort of ashamed or hide that, or, you know, we're all human at the end of the day, and this is unprecedented. And I would much sooner see somebody doing that than just leaving gaps, or, you know, almost leaving it to question in a way.
Yeah, don't hide what you do. I think I touched on this last week. I really respect those who have gone and worked for, I think, Ocado and any other very well trading supermarket at the moment. They're doing very well. I'd rather see that on a CV. And I'm currently representing candidates who are currently working at Sainsbury's, and I highlight it on their CV, and I hammer home saying they're not just sat at home doing nothing. Yes, it's to pay the bills, but I'd rather see them doing that than kind of, yeah, I suppose, yeah, feeling sorry for themselves at home. So it's, yeah, be proud of it, because you're doing what you need to. What about making yourself available for interviews? So we talk about the kind of highs and lows, etc. What's your experiences as hiring managers when you come to book people in for interviews? What would you, how can I phrase this? How would you appreciate them kind of clearing a diary for you, or do you think you need to be flexible as an employer to kind of work around them? Because sometimes I hit barriers where people tell me they really want this job, but then I ask them to free up a Thursday or maybe a couple of different dates 2 weeks ahead, and they can't do that. I know it's hard if you're currently employed. What's your experiences of that, trying to book people in for interview?
You have to be flexible. And, you know, if we're recruiting for reactive sales roles, we know 9 to 5 they are committed to the business that they're in, so we have to have some flexibility. But equally, if the hiring manager or the HR team aren't available after 6, then you've got to talk about what the options are. And, you know, it's classic when you're working and somebody says they're going for a dental appointment, they're like, well, going for an interview, and you don't want it to be uncomfortable for either party. You have got to be honest, and if you are serious about the move, then it is about possibly booking a holiday, asking for some lieu hours, making up some time elsewhere, because, you know, you do want to commit time to that interview. And if you've got to interview, we know you've probably put some really good effort in. You know, you've done your cover letter, you've read the advert, you've researched the company, you're geared up. You don't want that spoiled by your manager ringing you to get back to work, or you missing something, or you're preoccupied with what you've left behind. So, you know, make as much effort as you can to get to meet with what they can do.
And maybe if you are doing interim work at the moment for a supermarket, I keep using supermarket as an example. There's lots of other kind of interim jobs out there at the moment, but pre-warn your employer that, you know, this is I'm sure they're not daft to think that you've halved your salary and you used to be in hospitality and now you're doing, you know, Amazon driving. I'm sure they're not daft enough to not think that you're looking for a long-term role and it's just interim. So make them aware and see if they can be flexible to support that. Maybe pre-warn them. As opposed to missing out opportunities, because it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing where you want to be earning a salary, but you also want to secure the next role in the next 6 months. So maybe a bit of transparency if that is an interim role. What about you, Hayley? Do you struggle to get candidates booked in for interviews in
Yeah, I've had kind of both experiences really, and I guess it depends on maybe how we've approached it, and it's been sort of a couple of different ways. And what I mean by that is there's been times, again, more recently, early part of the year, where as part of the application advert, everything from day dot had the dates listed that interviews were going to be, because diaries were obviously just absolutely rammed. There were a couple of exceptions where we were able to kind of identify, you know, half an hour here or there, but equally, yeah, I did unfortunately encounter a couple that I think one lady was going on holiday, and it's like, what do you do? The dates were set. We tried to be flexible, but it was just proving just too difficult. So I think, yeah, being realistic, obviously probably not many people are going abroad at the moment. And it's maybe just having that conversation. So maybe if we'd have known that early doors, maybe I mean, this didn't obviously come out until much further down the process when, you know, right, yeah, we'd like to interview, here's the dates, you know, another few days go by, oh, I'm actually not going to be available, when it's like,
yeah, it's kind of preempting that both on the employer side and the applicant side to actually map out when the next stage is. Because if it's a presentation with a board of directors, or there might be an assessment day, or where there's actually key individuals and that's the only day they can do this month, you know, it might feel like you kind of jumping the gun a little bit. But ask at first aid interview, when is the second stage? Can you attend it? Yeah, exactly. As recruiters, we try and do that. So when we take a brief, we'll know exactly when the first, second, third stages are, and we can make sure the diaries are aligned. But things change, things get in the way. Maybe going back in terms of what you can do, maybe save some holiday dates if you can for interviews, just to give you a bit more flexibility. Because employers will move on, unfortunately, especially when they've got, you know, numerous applicants. Unfortunately, they're not going to wait around, because they might have 3 candidates and they don't want to miss out on the other 2 because they're waiting to, you know, for you to come back from Cornwall for a week. So I think it's to be.
It's being fair to everybody, isn't it? As well, it's being fair to the other applicants that have, you know, possibly moved heaven and earth and rearranged diaries to make sure that they can attend on those dates. That, you know, you've kind of got to have a level playing field. You know, like an element of flexibility, but it's being fair to all. So. Yeah, I think you have to really think that through as part of that process, like you say, establish timelines, early doors, and really think in advance about it.
Good, absolutely. Is there anything anyone else wants to kind of pick up on both those subjects we've just discussed around cover letters and the highs and lows? Anything I've not kind of touched on at all? No? Thoroughly done. Excellent. What about you, Ade? You're going to give us an update on the job market?
Yep. So we have some roles on at the moment. We're now starting to find that we've got candidates, whereas every candidate was interested in the job, we're now getting candidates that are interviewing for other things. You know, we've had a lady withdraw from our process because she'd accepted another role. These are all within hospitality. So we are starting to see movement. And I think we've touched on it before, not every role is being advertised. So, and we've talked about it as well, it's very important to get your online presence right, get yourself on LinkedIn. You know, you don't have to be posting every day, but make sure you've got a good profile on there, a picture, and it's all up to date, because a lot of it is being done, a lot of roles are being sourced directly by hiring managers, as opposed to advertising, because of the sheer influx of candidates that are coming in. So that's a really positive thing. There obviously has been redundancies. There's been a lot of restructuring within big groups, but we are also now seeing that those groups are now starting to advertise for roles because of the gaps that have been created with new roles that have come online. You know, they are junior level roles, we'll see some senior level roles. So things are starting to move. Village Hotels have currently got over 100 job vacancies on the caterer, which is, you know, a lot, and varying levels. Green King also well over 100 jobs on the caterer. Even Everyman Cinemas, who, you know, cinemas are struggling, and they are still, they're even advertising for, you know, head chefs and things like that. So definitely more positive signs from, you know, from where we were when I came back in July. Clients, you know, clients I'm speaking to, a couple of them are having they're beating the pre-COVID budgets for August, you know, with the leisure market and the staycations, which we would, you know, that conversation would not have been taking place 6 weeks ago. It was, you know, all doom and gloom. So as long as that continues, you know, and obviously we are some uncertain times, but if that continues, then roles are going to come back online, you know, quicker than we can imagine. So it goes back to that staying positive. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. So it's just keeping positive. And if, you know, the way people are talking, you know, once the events start to pick up, and, you know, if we don't get another, we'll talk about COVID, but if we don't see, you know, an increase in everything, then when the events come back online, it's just going to start improving. So definitely more positive than it was sort of 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Good. I spoke to a pub director this morning. They're having Christmas level sales at the moment, their weekly takings, but a lot to do with the Eat Out scheme, but hopefully that will give us more consumer confidence going into September, and those who are kind of umming and ahhing about whether to go for a bite to eat at the pub or go to a cinema, etc., are actually thinking, I feel safe in these environments. I think it'll have a knock-on effect. So fingers crossed those tradings continue. Probably not Christmas levels in September, but at least, year-on-year levels. So no, I think we're generally feeling a lot more positive about the market, but there's still a lot of businesses who are still going through waves of redundancies, etc. So they've still got to be finished. But on the back of that, there'll be new roles created. So I think this time next month, we should have a clearer picture of what the rest of the year will look like. So we've had a few questions come in. If I just kind of scan through what we've got here. Someone's just mentioned, if I'm struggling to speak to the right person, is LinkedIn a suitable way of initial contact for either job or future roles? So yeah, would you welcome contact via LinkedIn at all? Yeah.
It's hard to know who's going to talk, isn't it? We're both like...
Adrian was saying it's about initiative, it's about getting that in, it's about having your name up there, it's about showing intent. It might just be to say that you've applied for the role and this is what you're interested in, but yeah, I would welcome that, and it puts the human back into the element of what we're doing.
Cool. Another question we had come in, which I think is quite relative. Unfortunately, we struggle as recruiters sometimes, and they're our clients, but we struggle to get feedback on CVs, or even people who've spent time to interview with companies, and we still struggle to get good feedback rather than, they're not the right fit or they're not what we're looking for, or we just don't know what it is, but the gut says no. Is there a polite way of contacting employers? And I'll probably say this, if you've gone out and invested your time to interview, or even at the moment kind of video interview, or definitely invested a lot of time into an application and either met these people physically or virtually, and you're struggling to get kind of feedback on your CV because you're going to use that for your next interview and find out where you went wrong, is there a polite way to chase for that feedback? What's the best way of doing it? Shall I shout someone out? Hayley?
Sorry. I guess you can only do what you can do, and hopefully companies can take the time to give some form of feedback to people. Is there a polite way? I guess just saying, look, I'd really appreciate any feedback you may be able to give, as you appreciate. I really want to grow and improve for the future. Happy to do this whichever way you feel is possible. I'm available for a call at any time. I personally think I'd find it quite hard to not then feel that I need to speak to that person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying guilt trip people, but do you know what I mean? If somebody sort of really, really wants to know that feedback, and it's for that reason to help them grow, then I would absolutely feel inclined that it's the right thing to do. So I know that's probably not particularly an involved answer, but I think what you can do, go for it. What have you got to lose? As long as it's not forceful or loaded in any way, then just go for it.
And it is exactly that, isn't it? It's being polite. So it's getting your, let's say, the rejection email, and it's not responding immediately. It's allowing the time to settle and, gather your thoughts and do that rationally, maybe the next day or in the next couple of days. Thanking them for the time, if you haven't already done that, and, that you would welcome feedback, and, at a time that's suitable to them, we can arrange it. You'd prefer that by phone because you want to have that relationship. But yeah, absolutely. And like we've said from the beginning, it's about your personality, it's about you being a human in front of that recruiter. So anything that you can do to do that, you're going to have a better in.
And I think you touched on it. Maybe give yourself space to digest the rejection and take the emotion out of it, a bit more practical. Because unfortunately, as recruiters, we have a lot of the not so fun job where we have to call people though they've been unsuccessful. And the usual reaction we get on is, well, I didn't want that job anyway, or they'll find reasons why they're not upset. And it's a bit of a knee-jerk thing. And I think we all naturally do that. I mean, I did it to the Savoy 20 years ago, and I've still not forgiven them. But I think it's really important to be trying practical, because you might have been a close second, and maybe it's a direct employer who feels necessary to give you constructive feedback on the phone. And what you don't want to do is then discount yourself, because even though they've offered another candidate, it doesn't mean the candidate's done and dusted. They've still got to go through referencing stages. If it's to do with schools or something, it might have DBS checks to do. They've still got to tell their employer, or they might have other offers that are coming. You know, people have to wait out a month before they join, and things can change. So what you don't want to do is muddy your chances of, maybe you don't want to be second choice, but you really wanted that job, and unfortunately it happens. So maybe to a recruiter or to a direct employer, don't be negative about it. Take it on the chin, get some constructive feedback, and leave yourself kind of, I guess, on their radar, just in case something does happen, because we do quite a lot go back to that. And no one wants to be second choice, but unfortunately it's a job, isn't it? And if you really wanted a job, don't take it personally. And you might be reapproached for that job, or someone might fail probation 3 months in, they weren't right, or they quit, you know, and it can change. So yeah, try and leave it positive, I guess, is what I'm saying with employers. Try not to be negative about it. I've got one final question that's come through. It's a bit of a tricky one. It's a bit of a sensitive subject, but we'll go for it. I'm 53 and being considered for redundancy. What are the chances of finding me employment?
Yeah, high probability.
Yeah.
And I'm doing an apprenticeship, and someone was talking to me about diversity and inclusion, and I needed to mention it. And I was like, well, why would you mention it? That's the norms. That, you know, that's not a consideration. We don't discriminate. We don't do X, Y, and Z. And, you know, actually, I thought it's too easy to say, so we need to just justify that. But certainly within the business that I'm in, the brand that I represent, we really welcome, you know, we say creative diversity, but it's diversity in every sense of the word. And, you know, when you're pitched against somebody, and we're talking about this desirable list and the absolutely what we need, the chances are, you know, you could be at a fairer advantage if you are older and you've got more experience. So the younger may be at a disadvantage in terms of the skill set that are lined out. So that's, you know, definitely positive connotations as well. But I would absolutely utilise the experience gained and what you would bring to that position.
Yeah, I mean, just on an agency front, really, there was obviously a big, I can't remember when it came out, the Ageism Act, but we were really hot on it. And we actually delete a kind of date of births from our system. We don't record it. We take it off CVs. It's irrelevant for us. And I think what Gemma just spoke about there is, you know, we look at the experience. We don't look at the age. You know, you can have someone who maybe entered hospitality later on in their career, and they might not be as good as someone who started earlier. So it's about what you've done and what you've done with your time in the industry rather than how old you are. I think it's pretty irrelevant. So have faith. I don't, you know, it wouldn't be, if I was employed, I wouldn't be looking at age for Talent Hive. It's irrelevant. So have you ever,
that's not displayed anywhere. You don't put that on your CV.